Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. At any point, by the way, since we're a small group at the moment, feel free to interrupt and ask me questions. And I'm not sure how you normally do this. Do you like take questions at any point or later on, or?
Okay, so usually what we do, since you have a presentation and it's going to be a sort of this format,
Yeah.
Chat is where we put our questions, and once you finish the presentations, I read out the questions and call out the people that ask them, just so that they can join you in a conversation.
Sure.
So feel free to, feel free to write in the chat. I'm also looking at the chat all the time, so if you have any comments or any issues with the technical part of this as well, feel free to write so I can respond. Yeah, so that's how we usually do it.
Sounds good. So my presentation is not much of a presentation. It's just a few slides, but they're just kind of cues to keep the conversation going. So I'll introduce myself quickly before I kind of start sharing my screen. So yeah, I think, Anna, thanks for the kind words. I think you kind of summed it up. I was at Tomtom for a long time. I was an entrepreneur before that as well. So I'm from Australia. Well, I was born in India. My family moved to Australia when I was quite young, so I grew up in Australia. And then I moved here with my family about 6 years ago now. So I did various different things, consulting back in Australia. I had my own consulting business as well. Came here and joined Tomtom and had a wonderful journey in Tomtom. It's a very good product organization. And then I had an opportunity to join the kind of leadership team at Chartship, and so that's what I've been doing since January this year. I also have a small startup on the side that I do as kind of my side hustle. Clearly, I don't have enough things to do with 2 kids and a full-time job. I also need another business on the side. So COVID has been quite challenging in trying to keep all the balls up in the air. So one thing that I've learned probably over the last 10 years being in, I've been in product basically my whole career, but the last 10 years, having my own businesses, being part of a big organization, then being part of a startup has showed me that, we talk a lot about product and how to develop good products. And we talk a lot about, different product methodologies. Agile is pretty much ubiquitous now and everyone's doing Agile. Whether it's Kanban or Scrumban or Scrum or whatever you want to pick and do. But we talk about all those kind of product development methodologies very isolated from how we talk about the development of people. So we want to grow our products. We want to get millions and millions of consumers, or we want to get, thousands of businesses if it's a B2B product. And we had talked about the different business models where it's subscription or it's SaaS or, you name it, and we can talk about all of those things in product. But I still find when we talk about the growth of our people, it's so isolated from the different methodologies that we apply to growing product. And that baffles me, because you can't have a good product without good people behind it. And you don't need extraordinary people to create an extraordinary product. What you need to create, and this is basically the one thing you take away from this conversation, it's what you need is to create an environment where ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. I'm not the first one to say this, but it's a message that I keep harping about, that you need to bring the way you grow your people and the way you grow your product together. And when you look at methodologies in growing your product, you need to very seriously look at the methodologies in which you grow your people. Because it's all about creating an environment where ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. How do you create that environment? So I'll just share my screen. I don't use Zoom a lot. Okay.
You have a menu on the bottom of the.
Yeah, I know. I can see it now. Yeah.
There's a share screen.
We use Google Hangouts a lot. We don't actually use. Okay, so I'm guessing you can see my screen now.
Not yet.
Okay. Oh, it says a host is disabled. Attendee screen sharing.
Wait. Okay. There's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be able to share it.
I get a message saying host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Okay, but okay, let me make you a host. Okay, try now.
Yes, that worked. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Is that good?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So some of you may have seen this before. And it stands for various things. Together we're stronger than divided. Together we stand for, divided we fall. Equality is greater than being divided. So it stands for various things. But the way I've seen it and the way we see the charge strip is that equality in all aspects of the business is what you need in order to develop well. If you're divided in any part of the business, if any part of your business is siloed, you're not going to achieve what you want to achieve. So if I specifically look at this in terms of people and products, I've seen a lot I've talked a little bit about product methodologies, and you've all heard of like Kanban and Scrum and that kind of thing. And Lean is very much leading the forefront of product development now. So in terms of doing Lean Kanban or applying these kind of Lean supply chain methodologies that came out of Toyota in Japan to now software development is very much taking the forefront of how we develop. And a lot of people who are now mature in their agile implementations are now doing Lean product development, very much Kanban style development. In the people side, what is taking the forefront is OKRs. Now, I'm guessing many of you have heard of OKRs before. I know that companies I've worked for in the past were doing OKRs. And I mean, if you don't know what OKRs are, they're objectives and key results. It's very much kind of what Google and Amazon and stuff do in terms of driving performance in the business. So that's key. So I've seen companies, try and adopt OKRs. And my question also, when I first joined ChargeStrip, I also got the question by the founders, we should be doing OKRs. And I asked why? Why do you want to do OKRs? And very often when I ask this question, there is answer, oh, Google's doing it, and we can achieve Google-esque performance if we do OKRs. And that still gets me the question, but just because Google's doing it doesn't mean if we implement OKRs overnight, we're going to be able to achieve the same results. We're not, because OKRs and that performance-driven culture is very much that. It's a culture. It's a culture you need to get to if you want to do OKRs. You can't retrofit OKRs onto your existing company performance and culture because people get lost. Because the first question you get when you try and do these new performance management methods is, well, but how does this relate to my own performance reviews? How does this relate to my salary negotiations, et cetera, et cetera? So it's very disjointed. So you can't retrofit something like OKRs. You can't retrofit any kind of performance management system. It's the same way in product. You can't really retrofit Kanban until you understand what is it that you're trying to achieve. So people and product should go together, but the first thing you need to look at is, what are your core values? Now, I'm not talking about the organization as a whole. Look at your own team. Look at your own product that you're trying to develop. Excuse me. So you need to look at what is it in your little team. You might, and this doesn't matter if you've got, if you're a product manager and you've got no one reporting to you. You just look at your own team. You could be a product manager, you could be a product owner. You still impact the day-to-day work that people in your team do, whether they directly, whether you directly line manage them or not. So what is it? What is the culture in your team? What are your core values? What are you trying to achieve? If you're trying to create a really performance-driven team, fantastic. Implement OKRs and do that. But if your values are something else, if your values are innovation, so I've written some of the values that ChargeStrip has at the bottom here. Unbound, that is to be completely free to try different things without feeling restricted. Free to try different things without feeling, like you're scared of failure. And this kind of fail fast, everyone talks about it. First class is for us means to be fast, deliver to the market quickly while not compromising quality. So it is not fast and quality, fast or quality, but fast and quality. Progress, so to continue to keep moving, don't stop, keep moving, keep making progress. To be awesome at everything we do, whether it's our culture, whether it's our people, whether it's our products, to elevate each other. So not just creating the best products in the market, but to make sure that we elevate each other. And Great Scott it's a reference to Back to the Future movie. If I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's this Great Scott moment, which is a sudden kind of eureka moment that you have. And we want to create these kind of eureka moments every day. So in none of those do you see performance. That doesn't mean that we're not an organization that wants to, get the best out of our people. But none of those values says performance-driven culture. So there's no point to implement something like OKRs, because you're looking at, again, people isolated to the product development side of the organization. So you need to first understand what is it that you're trying to achieve. And the core value that most people have, if I get away from organizations or teams, the core value that people have, the reason why people come into work is multiple things. Like firstly, yes, you need a paycheck, right? You need to make money. And that is important. It's important because at the end of the day, if you had all the money in the world, you'd probably be doing something else. Or if you had all the money in the world and you would still continue to do what you're doing today, fantastic. You've pretty much found your dream job. Don't quit, hold on to it and don't let go. And then teach me how you did that. The second thing is, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. So the second thing is, you're trying to get a sense of achievement. So you want to be part of something that's a bigger picture. You want to believe in the mission and the values of whatever you're trying to do. And you want to make sure that those are aligned with your core values. Thirdly, you want some sort of career progression. Most people, not everyone, most people are ambitious, right? And I'm guessing you all joined the Serbian product community because you want to learn from each other. You're ambitious. You want to be better at what you do. So these are things that people care about. So in order to be able to get your people to build the best products, you need to first address these things. In order to create an environment where people can innovate, where people are not scared of failure, you need to first address these things. How can I grow my people? How can I create an environment where we're not competing against each other for the same job title? So you'll have people excelling at their jobs because at the end of the day, there's a performance review. I want to do really well in my performance review so I can get a promotion. But there's only so many promotions available. There's only so many senior product managers. There's only so many directors of product management that are available. So am I competing with the person next to me? How is that in any sense getting the best value out of your people? If you have a limited number of job titles and everyone's competing for the same job titles, why not create an environment where your kind of performance is not tied to your growth in the organization? So what I mean is that your job title growth is not tied to your end of year performance review, but it's tied to what your peers think of you, right? And this is a completely different way of thinking. So it took me a long time to convince the founders of ChargeStrip to actually go this way. But the one thing that we all had in common was that we didn't only want to give a promotion to people who are good at negotiating, because that might benefit someone like me, but it doesn't benefit all the quiet achievers. There are people who are very, very good at their jobs, but they will not come to you and ask you for a promotion. They will not come to you and ask you for a pay rise, but they deserve it just as much as anybody else. So we wanted to be able to create an environment where everyone could grow. There was enough promotions for everyone. Everyone felt safe to fail, not because their boss was going to look down upon them or their boss was threatened by them, but because their peers were evaluating them. And we created a system where basically your performance, your growth, and the growth of the product is all tied to your team and based on a peer review system. Now, I know this might sound foreign and you might think, well, I'm part of this big organization. There's no way I can do something like this. It sounds fuzzy. What does it even mean? I'll go into into concretely what we did in a minute. But don't be scared to try this in just your little team. It doesn't have to mean you have to go tomorrow and try and change your entire organization. It's just a change of thinking. It's a change of culture in your own team to set up practices where people aren't competing with each other for job titles, while their everyday job is to build a good product. Their everyday job should be to build a good product and to improve their skills and to grow, because all of that is intrinsically linked. It's the one way in which you'll grow people and you'll also grow your product at the same time. So this is not something that needs to be, you don't need to go and change the policy of your organization. You don't even need to go and set anything in stone. These are just practices that you can do already in your small team of people. You might have a big team of people, just to create that culture where people aren't competing with each other for a pay rise at the end of the year, not competing with each other for so I know at Tomtom we had this almost bell curve, right? So if I got exceeds expectations in my performance review at the end of the year, it meant somebody else couldn't. I'm not criticizing Tomtom in any sense of they grew just the way the rest of the industry grew. But this works in a lot of organizations where only a certain number of people can be at the top of the bell curve and the rest have to be average, because there's only so much budget available for everyone to get a pay rise. So one person can get a 10% pay rise, whereas everybody else can only get a 2% pay rise. And I think that's incredibly unfair, because it's really biased towards someone like me, who can be quite articulate and can be quite opinionated and can go in there and negotiate a pay rise. So that system benefits someone like me, but it doesn't benefit hundreds of other people who are very, very good at their jobs, very good at what they're doing, but they might be quiet achievers. So one thing, and I talked about, so I'll address each one of these things. So the first one is fair pay. So people want to get pay rises. I want to get pay rises, but the pay rise is linked to my performance, and often it's not linked to the growth of my product. So it's completely disjointed. OKRs try to solve this. OKRs try to solve it by linking not my performance, but by linking the success of my product with my success. But it creates a lot of confusion, because OKRs are not very well tied to end of year performance reviews that most companies do, or quarterly performance reviews that you do in OKRs. You try and review your OKRs every month or every 3 months or whatever. So it tries to link my goals with the goals and the success of the product, but it still is very disjointed and unclear how it links the pay rise that I get at the end of the year, or the growth in my job title with the growth of my product. So the first thing we did at Charter, we said, okay, we're going to implement fair pay. Okay, pay is going to be based on a standard formula that is not based on any one person, but it's based on your review of your peers. So how we did this is, whenever we interview someone, we have at least 3 people interview someone. Each person, after interviewing, fills out a standard survey. So the survey basically looks at the values that we have as Charter, the 5 values that I showed you earlier, and how closely that person meets those values. So we want to hire people who are really, really close fit with our values, but who add to the culture. So you don't want to hire people who fit your culture. Why? You want to improve your culture as you go. Why would you hire someone who's a copycat of you? You're not adding to your culture. You want to hire someone who adds to your culture, but it's very important to hire someone who fits your value system, because you cannot change people's core values. So it's important to hire for value fit and for culture add. So whenever we hire someone, we fill out, we have a standard survey, which basically says how closely does that person fit our values, do they add to our culture, and finally, they're fit for the job. So we don't look at experience or pedigree or anything like that, but from talking to someone, just intuitively, how well do we think that person can do that particular job? Because you'll find someone might have 10 years of experience, but they're so, certain ways of doing things are so ingrained in them that they're not open to change. So then I'd much rather hire a graduate who's fresh out of university, and they are, so eager to learn and so eager to work hard. They will hit the ground running so much quicker, sometimes, not always, than someone who might have 10 years of experience. Not saying I undervalue 10 years of experience. I have 10 years of experience, and that wisdom does count for something. But you have to go with your intuition sometimes to go, do I think that this person who has only 2 years of experience will actually come in and have so much more impact on the organization than someone with 10 years of experience? So we basically all fill out this survey, and the survey basically spits out a number at the end that tells us how closely is that person aligned with the values that we have. Is there a culture add there? And then the mastery is basically intuitively, is this person, what level are they at intuitively? So I'll come to these levels. So we have certain levels that we have defined, and I'll come to them in the middle. So what level do we think they are? And then we have a base value, and the base is basically just, a market, ideal market, base or base salary for someone. Depends on what region you're in. If you're in Eastern Europe, Western Europe, if you're in America, if you're in Australia. Excuse me, I've got a cough, so no, I don't have corona. So
it's not
so
fun.
we basically I know. No, but I've isolated myself already, so it's fine. Excuse me. So this formula, basically we make it available, and we do everyone's starting salary based on this formula. So no matter what level you started in ChargeStrip, whether it's my level or whether you are starting as an intern, we apply this formula based on the survey that everybody does. It's completely, it's basically published. And if you want to come in and negotiate your salary, that's fine. We're open to negotiation, but we don't negotiate the number. So we won't sit across the table or across Zoom with anyone and discuss the amount of money you will take home at the end of the day. The only negotiable value in this formula is the mastery. How well suited do you think you are to that position compared to what we intuitively think? That is the only negotiable part of this formula. And the reason we do that is because we don't want to sit across the table and go, oh, okay, we're going to pay you $2,500 a month. No, we're going to actually bring it up to $275. No, we're actually going to bring it up to $3,500. That number is meaningless to me. I don't want to talk about money across the table. I want you to convince me that you think you are better suited or a higher level for the job that I think you are. And most people are very, very comfortable talking about their skills and their experience than they are talking about that monetary number. And if you don't negotiate, you choose not to negotiate, that's fine. The formula is published. We tell you the value, and we tell you what mastery level you will start at. And if you don't agree with it, but you don't feel comfortable negotiating, your peers will agree, and your peers will nominate you to move up very quickly. So let me explain to you how this works now. Excuse me. So coming to the new thing, these levels that I talked about, or the mastery level that I talked about, we have this thing called Grow With Us in ChargeStrip. And what we try and do is we try and hire people who are junior so that they can grow within the organization. This is because we want to create growth paths for everyone. So it's important for us that everyone in the organization has the ability to grow without being hindered by anyone. There's no competition. You're not competing for a set number of positions with each other, because what we've done is we've created an apprenticeship system. You can do this within your own team, whether you have one person reporting to you, 2 people reporting to you, and no one reporting to you. You still have a product team. You don't need HR approval. You don't need to change policies. You can just start this within your team just by saying, this is what we're going to do, and this is the culture that we're going to have in our organization. So we basically created an apprenticeship system in the organization. So we try and hire people at the novice stage. And this is basically your mastery level that we look at in your interview. So you started a novice, you can then move to accomplished, experienced, master, manager ops, or leader. So once you become a master, you can get to manager ops, and manager ops is basically 2 different streams. You can choose to manage a team of people, or you can choose to say, no, I want to continue my growth, but I don't want to manage people. There's a lot of technical people who don't like managing people. So we have a distinct path for people who still want to continue to grow, but don't want to, don't necessarily want to line manage people. So we don't want them to stop. So just, the ability to line manage shouldn't be, you shouldn't reach a level where all you can do next is manage people or nothing. So then you can go to strategy ops, which is kind of you form a team of very highly skilled people who try and solve problems across the organization. I'll come to that. Or you can go to a leadership role. So the way it works is there's no set time limit between going from novice to accomplished to experienced, etc. You could do it in a month. You could do it in 3 years. The definition of each one is very clear. What you need to go from novice to accomplished to experienced, the skills that you need are very, very clear and published in our employee handbook, which I won't go into because the handbook's going to be published. It is, we have an open HR system, so it's going to be published and everyone can see it on the website. So I won't go into what each one takes. But what I do want to talk about is how it actually works in terms of performance and in terms of also meeting your product goals and growing the product. So anyone in your team can nominate you to advance from novice to accomplished. So I think so this is how it actually works. So every month we set goals. So we don't do OKRs because we're not a performance-driven organization. We are a product-driven organization, which means that your performance and your goals are tied to the product goals, but in a way that is peer-reviewed. So every single person doesn't have a line manager. Each person has a coach. Anyone who is the accomplished level onwards can coach anybody else in the organization. When you get to a manager level, the reason we do this is because we want everyone to get experience with managing people. Because when you get to master, and it's now your chance to choose between becoming a manager of a team of people or going into strategy operations, you can make an educated choice. No, I enjoy coaching and managing people. No, I don't enjoy coaching and managing people. It's very difficult to make that decision until you've had some experience line managing or coaching someone. So it is effectively line management, what we call it coaching. Anyone from an accomplished level upwards can coach 1 or 2 other people. But you start to coach or manage a team when you get to level 5. So what you do as a coach is you have one-on-one meetings every week with the people that you manage, and you do set monthly goals. You have to pick an area of focus. So we have 3 areas of focus in ChargeDrip: growth, initiative, and impact. The reason why growth is listed as number 1 is one of our core values is to elevate people. So we want to elevate each other, which means we want to grow together. And what often happens is people said, you have, everyone in a lot of organizations, you get a training budget. We also get a training budget in ChargeDrip. But you get so involved in your day-to-day work that growth goals or learning or personal development and professional development skills are never tied directly to your performance review. It's always an add-on. It's never as core as growing your product. So again, there's a disjoin there. So we say basically one of your main focus areas has to be growth. Another one is initiative, which is basically taking initiative, finding something in ChargeDrip that you can change and improve, or helping somebody else learn is also an initiative. And impact. Impact is basically how much weight you carry, not only in your role, but it's a scale up. So in the company as a whole. So for instance, you might water the plants because the plants are dying and we have invested 2,000 euros in plants in our new office. That's impact. That's wonderful. You're still having an impact on the organization, even though it's not core to your job description. So in an organization like us, pulling your weight is really, really important, because if everyone doesn't pull the weight, basically ChargeDrip dies. So we have 3 areas, and the way we work is every month you have to pick a focus area. And then you pick a focus area, and then you define a goal in that focus area, and your goal is just tweet size. So it's no more than 140 characters. So we keep it all really lean. Everything is really lean, so it's really easy to adopt. So your goal is not some, objective with multiple key results. It's a 140 character focus goal that you're going to focus on that month. The way we also work is you have to cycle through all of these three areas. So if I pick growth this month, I have to pick initiative or impact next month. And in my 3rd month, I have to pick the other one. So you have to cycle through all 3 every 3 months, which means the reason we do this is to make sure that you do a growth goal once every 3 months. Otherwise, you won't, because it always takes a backseat. So what you do is you have one-on-one meetings with your coach every week. your coach helps you in week 1 of the month to sit down and define your goal and to pick your focus area, because they are generally more aware of the bigger picture, and can make sure that your goal is aligned with the organizational goals and the product goals as a whole. You then pick 3 of your peers to give you feedback on your goal at the end of the month. So this doesn't have to be your coach. You pick any 3 of your peers who effectively will be empowered, or you'll be working together with that month anyways, and you pick them to give you feedback at the end of the month. And we do all this. So we use Asana, basically. We don't use, I guess a lot of people use Jira and Trello. We use a ticketing system, Asana, and we actually do this all in tickets in Asana. So you basically just create a goal for yourself, and you tag 3 people in your ticket to give you feedback at the end of the month. Every week you meet up with your coach and you track progress in that ticket of your goal. At the end of the month, basically your peers who you have nominated in that ticket will come and give you feedback. And again, feedback is done in 140 characters. So it's all tweet sizes, extremely lean. The reason we do this is because we don't want people sitting there writing an entire essay as feedback. Because we want you, if you want more feedback, pick up the phone and call one of your peers and talk to them. So we encourage really short, quick goal setting, really short, quick feedback, so that if you want more feedback or something is unclear, you'll send someone a message on Slack. You'll organize a 30-minute meeting, or you'll pick up the phone and call someone and say, hey, can you just elaborate a little bit more on your feedback? Which is such a nicer way of getting feedback than just a description written in a paragraph. And it gets everyone talking to each other, especially during these times when we're barely seeing each other at the moment. So this is what we do. So the way this ties into your growth is, if you consistently, you're getting good feedback, you're growing, you're showing initiative, you're showing impact, you can request any of your peers, not just your coach, to nominate you to advance from novice to accomplished to experienced. This basically changes your job title. So novice is basically a junior. Accomplished is like, I think accomplished is just, say, product manager. Experienced to senior product manager. So your job title grows. You also automatically get a pay rise. So, excuse me. So the way it works is, any one of your peers can nominate you to advance from one level to the other. It doesn't have to be your coach. It can be anyone who thinks you're ready, who has been giving you feedback on your goals previously, can nominate you and say, I think you are ready. So someone can say, I think Nilofer is now ready to go from COO to, I don't know, to the board. And if 2 of my peers agree with that nomination, that's it. It's automatic. It's done. You go up to the next level, and your next paycheck, you get a 4% pay rise. So we've published this. We've made it automatic. It doesn't matter. If 3 of your peers agree, 1 nominee and 2 other people agree with your promotion, then you're ready for the promotion. You don't need a coach to tell you that. You've clearly convinced your peers that you're ready for a promotion. So why should anyone stop you? And the way the job titles work is, so if I go back, so you can go from basically being a junior to no adjective, effectively, to senior, to being master, which I can't remember what the job title exactly is, but it's, I think it's principal. You can go to being a team lead or a team manager. Strategy ops means you become an expert, and leader means you get a C-level position or head of development, etc. So the only difference is if you want to become a leader, when you go from a manager on ops to a leadership position within the leadership team, the board has to agree. So there has to be a nomination from the board, but that's just a legal requirement. Anywhere else in the system, it's just nomination of your peers, and you can scale up. So this means that your own growth is not limited. It's basically how much initiative, how much impact, and how much you invest in your own personal and professional development. Your goal setting every month ties into the goal setting, what ChartStrip has as annual goals, what we have as our big, hairy, audacious, 10-year goals, and also which are, basically one-to-one with our product goals. So it brings the growth of people and the growth of product really close together. It also means that people aren't, there's no confusion. There's no confusion about, okay, so how does my objectives tie into my performance review? How do my objectives tie in with my promotion at the end of the year? It just makes it really clear. It means everyone is growing together. If you can convince your peers, you grow. You're not competing with anyone else for budget. So at the end of the year, everyone gets a pay rise. Even if the way it works is if you are with ChargeShip at the end of the year, that means you deserve a pay rise. Even if means you have, if for any reason your peers say that you haven't been performing, we'll sit down and have a serious conversation with you. The conversation will end two ways. Either we'll part ways mutually, or we'll give you a second chance. We might even give you a third or a fourth chance because we believe in you and we think that, you know, you need to be given that third or fourth chance. If you're given a second, third, or fourth chance, you deserve your pay rise at the end of the year because we've decided to keep you as part of ChargeShip. So if we decide to part ways mutually, you don't get another paycheck. That's just the way it works. But if you are continuously showing a growth initiative and impact, and you stay within ChargeShip, then you deserve a pay rise at the end of the year. Everyone gets a 2.5% pay rise. We don't do any salary negotiations. If you go up a level from novice to accomplished to experienced, automatically your next paycheck goes up by 4%. So again, there's no negotiations, nothing. It's extremely transparent. It doesn't mean that one person comes in and negotiates a 10% pay rise and somebody else doesn't, so ends up with a 1 or 2% pay rise. Everyone gets the same thing. So there's no reason for your peers not to nominate you to Excel either, because it doesn't impact their paycheck. It doesn't mean that next month they can't get promoted and won't get a 4% pay rise as well. It does create risk for ChargeShip as a company. In your team, it might mean that you have to relook at the way your team does budgeting. But if you look at it across the board, if you are given a certain pool of money, say you are given 100,000 euros at the end of the year for everyone's pay rises, right? I've just picked a number out of the sky. If you actually do fair pay rises across the board, rather than giving 1% 8 or 10%, but give everybody 2%, anyone who goes up a level gets 4%. There's no salary negotiations. Actually, you'll find it amounts to the same thing at the end of the year, but you've been a lot more fair to everybody in your team. And you have not, you know, isolated your personal people growth from your product growth. Actually, that was the end of sort of what I wanted to say. I know that this is kind of, it's a little bit difficult to get your head around because it's so different to what other tech companies are doing, and we chose to do it this way. This was basically myself and the two founders of ChargeShip who came up with this model. We sort of built it from scratch using best practices in a lot of different industries, because we came into this with certain core values that we all shared. We shared the fact that the growth of our people was really, really important to us. Losing people at this stage is difficult because it's very expensive to hire good people. Not only that, if you let go of people, it's not, you know, it's not the person, it's a system to blame. If we can't hold on to good people, it's because we haven't created growth for them in the company. We haven't shown them how they can grow from the position they started at to something that, you know, they believe they deserve. And we also came into it going, we don't want to only reward people who are good at negotiating. We want to build a really, really good product, but we can only do that by creating an environment where ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. So I hope this resonated with some of you. I hope it wasn't completely out of left field. I know I didn't talk a lot about kind of agile and Kanban and product development. It's because I really see people development as core to product development. That's it. I think that's been about 45 minutes. I'll stop there.
Yeah, it would be great if we have any questions now for Nilofer. You can
great. Yeah,
there are only a few people on the call, so you can unmute and just start talking. Yeah, feel free.
We can discuss.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So Milos here. I'm a product manager in Ticketmaster company. Previous role was similar to product management. Yeah, from my experience, so the metrics that people using for the growth and based are sometimes a very direct metrics, that KPI, but probably always is something that is non that you cannot express with precise metrics. So, and my question is how this model where you applied in which company, and experience how it goes to the end. So
So I agree. I mean, KPIs are also, a nice way of doing it. But again, it depends on what kind of organization you want, you're part of. So what kind of team, what kind of culture you want to build. That's why I think your core values are so important. So I was against, calling it KPIs and calling it OKRs. Just call it something else unless you really want to create a performance-driven culture. The words that you use and the terms that you use really impact how people see things. And KPIs, I find, it's a real performance-driven term, and that's wonderful. That's wonderful if that's the culture you're trying to create. But we decided to go with things like, just goals. We just call them simple goals, and we call them, and we called it, what did I say? This apprenticeship model, and we called it peer-reviewed performance is what we call it. So we don't specifically call it KPIs. So this is something that we're currently applying in ChargeDrip. We started doing it. We thought of this kind of, it was sort of organically being done even before I joined ChargeDrip, and I sort of helped to formalize it and put in place some structures, which was effectively my job. In ChargeDrip, we've been doing it for the last couple of months only, so it's very new, but it's a culmination of kind of months of work. I'll admit it was very positively received. So far, it's been going really well. People love the fact that they don't have a boss necessarily, but they have a coach. And we're very, very careful how we pick coaches. The leadership team picks coaches at the moment. And we're very, very careful about how we pick coaches. So we don't pick coaches necessarily based on seniority. We pick coaches if we know it's going to be a mutually beneficial relationship and both people can learn from each other. So one person is a coach and the other person is an apprentice, but effectively everyone is an apprentice as well. So we pick coaches specifically if we know there's a set of skills that this person can teach somebody else. So for instance, the people I'm coaching are very closely related to people I want to teach to do my job in the future. So I'm sort of, I've picked people to coach who I want to nurture in the next 5 years or so to do the CEO job. And that's how we've picked coaches for everyone. So in ChargeDrip, it's working quite well. It works really well. And to be honest, one of the reasons it actually works really well is because of the tool that we chose. And this is brutal honesty. So we didn't implement a new tool. All our engineering side of the organization uses Asana for ticketing. So we just said, well, you know what, let's make it a ticketing system. You set your goals in Asana, you assign the ticket to yourself, you write your progress in the ticket, and you tag 3 people who can give you comments in the ticket. At the end of the month, you close the ticket and you duplicate it and you make another one and you set a new goal. So it was really lean, really easy to adopt because we chose a tool that everyone was already using. So we didn't have to train people into using a new tool. It's also worked really well because it's peer reviewed and you can choose the peers who give you feedback. So no one forces you, you can choose any peers to give you feedback. So people end up picking their friends, which is nice anyways in an organization because people have friends. So if your co-workers have become your friends and you choose your friends to give you feedback, yeah, your friends might be really nice to you 1 or 2 months, but the 3rd month, if you're not really doing your job, they're going to honestly tell you because they see you as a friend. And the people who will be brutally honest with you are your friends. So for us, so far, it's been working really well. And the reason it's working well, not only because we chose a tool and we didn't have to teach people a new tool, because not only are people asking for feedback more, people are so willing to give feedback to their peers without having this hierarchy of a boss who you report to. You report to each other and you're accountable to each other, which is so much more powerful than being accountable to one line manager. So I'm not sure if that answers your question in a sort of roundabout way, but ChargeDrip is the only organization where I have seen this model. So there's a few other organizations, HubSpot, a few, there's one more, Atlassian does something similar as well. HubSpot is a big proponent of this. Buffer does something very similar to this as well. In ChargeDrip, we just took it and made it our own flavor. But this whole thing of peer-reviewed performance really comes from the education sector. So the education sector basically pioneered peer-reviewed assessments. And it's us and Buffer and a few others who brought it into the tech space.
Yeah. And the evaluation is 360 evaluation, so you also can be evaluated by peers, so also by managers as well, or?
Yeah, so you can choose. So your coach gives you, so your coach, who's effectively your manager, consolidates the feedback from your peers at the end of the month. And at the end of the month, you sit down and you do a retrospective on your goal. So you sit down with your line manager or your coach, as we call them, and you do a retrospective with them about your goal and the feedback that you've received from your peers. And then added on top of that, your coach can give you feedback as well. But we do it in the sense that we expect you to ask for feedback. So we want to create an environment where people are constantly asking for feedback rather than feeling the need that your manager has to give you feedback constantly. So if you want feedback, you have to ask for it. So every month you have to pick 3 peers to give you feedback. Your manager consolidates that feedback and discuss it with you in the retrospective at the end of the month, and then adds their own feedback to it, but only if you ask for it. It's also because your own, the way you grow is by your peers nominating you to grow. So if you don't ask your peers for feedback, there's no reason for them to nominate you to grow. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. Yeah, no problem.
Anybody else? Okay,
yeah, everything was super clear.
Yeah. No, I have one. So before you implemented this in Charge Trip, what was the culture like? I mean, how big was the transition and the change that you needed to do?
So in all honesty, when I joined Charge Trip, it was chaos. But it's a reason why I was.
How many people are there in Charge Trip, just to get an idea?
So it's 20 now. It's 20 now. Unfortunately, we might have to let someone go. So it might be 19, but that happens. So Anna, we started doing some of this in my team at Tomtom. So I started to start my team. So I should say this. So when I was part of Tomtom, I was part of a really big organization that had started to do OKRs, was trying very hard to implement OKRs. And I'm not sure when you left.
Yeah, we did the same, of course. We started implementing the OKRs, but the thing is, there was no support for the OKRs implementation. So everybody, every team was on their own in terms of how they understand it, how they're going to implement it, and how the OKRs are actually relating to the overall goals of the company. Especially because the overall, RAML was used for the company goals.
Exactly.
So there was a sort of gap. How do you map to fit the goals from the company and to cascade it down to the level of the team? Yeah.
So that's what's the hardest, right? It's hard to understand where you fit into the bigger system. And in Tomtom, we also found like we were also doing kind of OKRs in isolation. And this is a good conversation to have for anyone who's part of this really big organization. In Tomtom, OKRs was a good idea, but it was also retrofitted. And I think the reasons why it was initially adopted was because everyone, kind of everybody was doing in the tech industry and it seemed like the thing to do. And we all got caught up in OKR fever. I mean, we did in my team as well. I was a big proponent of doing OKRs at the time in my product team. But it just became extremely cumbersome. It became extremely cumbersome because with OKRs, you have to first get your head around writing things that are outcome focused. And that's a really good practice anyways. But to start writing an OKR that's focused on an outcome that's measurable, it's just a really big leap of faith. When you've been doing KPIs or doing things in other ways, So in my little team, I was part of a product team called Amigo. We tried to kind of first do our product strategy very tightly linked to OKR. So try and write it in an OKR fashion where it was an objective and key results so that it could be tied to everyone's own objectives. We tried to do a lot of 360-degree feedback to try and get this peer-reviewed system going. When I joined Charge Trip, I found a lot of this was going on anyways, but that's also the benefit of being a small startup, right? They were scaling up. So the benefit of that is you are seeing everyone constantly. It's, successes and failures are so raw and so visible, you can't really get away from it. But it was also a bit of chaos, right? No one even had a job title when I started. And I know that it's, I think it's naive to say that job titles don't matter. Job titles matter. I mean, in any industry, people can, it matters. It doesn't matter what level you're at. People take job titles seriously. So no one had a job title. No, some people had been there a year, some people had been there 3 years. We just got this big round of funding, and everyone, and there was no longevity. People didn't know what they were going to be doing next year. So the positive was that the culture of wanting to do something that wasn't hierarchical was there from the start. And then when I started, and I met the two founders, we all wanted to create a system that wasn't, grades and scales. It wasn't kind of, people can grow, and you have, a product manager and a senior product manager, and you have a director of product management who manages all the product managers. We just didn't want to do that, because it just meant that people, we would start to lose good people, because if someone was a senior product manager and got offered a director role somewhere else, they'd leave, because they didn't see any path to becoming director within ChargeDrip. So we just decided that in order to do all of this, we had to adopt principles and sort of create a system which allowed everyone to grow. At the same time, our product has to grow, because if our product doesn't grow and we don't get business, ChargeDrip doesn't exist. So I was lucky in the sense that we had the freedom, at least in my team and Tomtom, to start to do a little bit of this. It was called OKRs and was called 360, but it was still a peer-reviewed system. But being able to structurally put it in place from first principles, I've been really fortunate to be able to do that in ChargeDrip. But the transition, it wasn't easy. What wasn't easy was selling this to everyone in the organization, selling it in a way to say, it's not a hierarchical system. It is a system that is intended to be fair to the quiet achievers and to the strong negotiators. So just getting buy-in always takes a bit of time, also because it's a change in thinking. Everyone understands the OKRs, everyone understands 360-degree feedback. You start using different terms, and it just takes people a little while to get used to it. But because we used warm terms like coaching, and we use peer-reviewed feedback, whereas the word 360 can sometimes be a little bit isolating, because we chose our terminologies carefully, even though the underlying principles might have been similar, people were more welcoming and really open to it. And it kind of, to be honest, every single person just took it up and started doing it. And maybe we were fortunate, but I think a lot was it to do with the language that we used.
So how do you form the goals? You mentioned that there are goals set each month. So how do you form those goals in context of a sort of strategy that you have a bit long term?
Yeah. So what we've done is, so we haven't said, like, we didn't write our Rumble strategy. We basically picked 3 outcomes that we want for ChargeDrip at the end of the year. One of them is how many B2B customers we want. One is a product strategy goal, but they're basically 3 outcomes that we want to achieve at the end of the year. And that's our strategy for our team. And so because those are outcome focused, they're just 3 outcomes. It's not an objective accuser, it's just 3 outcomes. Everyone sets their goals. So on our board, basically our goal setting board, the 3 outcomes for ChargeDrip are at the very top. So everyone who goes to write a ticket for their own goal basically sees what the 3 outcomes are. And then you can write your outcome in the same language as the outcomes of ChargeDrip. So a lot of it is to do with that. A lot of it is constantly, honing into people what are the outcomes we're trying to achieve at the end of the year, but doing it in a way that it's so memorable. So what I did, for instance, in Tomtom, I did something very similar. I basically created a postcard, and I didn't get budget approval or anything. I literally used my own money to do this because it cost me $20. So I got a designer to help me just design a postcard that had 3 outcomes that we wanted to achieve for the I think it was 3 outcomes for the Amigo team. And basically I came up with a catchphrase. I think it was like, own the road, share the experience, or something like that. And I basically went and printed these postcards that I put on everybody's desk. And the postcard had 3 outcomes that the Amigo team had to, so this was the name of the team I was in. The Amigo team had to achieve by the end of the year. And I basically put a postcard on everyone's table. And then I know ever since I've left, they've printed fridge magnets and they've done stuff like that. That was basically just to hone into people, what is the outcome for the team needs to achieve at the end of the year? And it cost me $20. Like, I didn't even bother, going and saying, budget approval. No, screw that. Like, it's $20. I'll buy 2 less coffees this month. So I printed these postcards and I put them on everyone's desk so that everyone always saw what is the outcome the Amigo team wanted to achieve at the end of the year. So then when you go, because writing your objectives in outcomes is very difficult. Like for instance, you can say, an outcome for me was do a presentation for the Serbian product community this month, right? But that's not the outcome I'm trying to achieve. The outcome I'm trying to achieve is, to enable a discussion. So maybe the outcome is I get 3 questions that I can successfully answer at the end of this, discussion. So if I've engaged 3 people to ask me questions, amazing, I've done an awesome job, So if the goals for your team are written in that language, it's very easy then to translate them to the language of your goal, for your individual goal. So for me, a lot of it is keep it really simple. Remote strategies are complicated because it's very difficult to then go, okay, where do I fit into this remote strategy? Yeah. But if you have, one really simple outcome you want to achieve at the end of the year, and it's honed into people that nobody can forget it, I should be able to go to anyone in your team and tell them what is the top outcome your team has to achieve at the end of the year. And it should be on the tip of their tongue. Then when you go to write your goals, that's also why we kept it really simple. The charge trip strategy is 3 outcomes, each written in no more than 140 characters, so tweet sized. And every single person's goal is not expected, every monthly goal is not expected to be more than 140 characters. It's just to keep really simple, really lean, really focused every month. So you go and write your own goal and your coach helps you to write your goal by keeping you focused on the 3 outcomes for charge trip at the end of the year, which are basically product outcomes. We're a product organization. So, I would say keep it as simple as possible. The simpler you start off, you can add complexity as you go. But the more simple you keep it, as I said, print a postcard or give everyone a bookmark or a fridge magnet, or a post-it note. That's also somewhere you can start. But strategy documents shouldn't be a page long. They shouldn't even be a remote strategy, according to me. They should be, a tweet. Then nobody will forget it, because you ask anyone to recite a remote strategy and you can't. You can recite a tweet. I mean, Trump does that really well. I'm not a Trump supporter at all. But I'm just saying the one thing that Trump does bloody well is infuriate people about his tweets. So if I can get that level of people remembering my strategy, I've done well. So.
Do we have any questions maybe now?
Come on, I need a 3rd question, and then I've achieved my outcome.
Don't worry, I have a lot of questions, but I don't want this to be just a conversation between the 2 of us. I'm sort of hoping that somebody would join. Yeah, so, okay, so you have this like a long-term strategy, which is on the level of tweet length, and then you have your monthly goals. How independent are those goals per team? I mean, how is the team sufficient enough that they can really achieve those goals on their own, independently from the other parts of the organization? I mean, since you're evaluating them based on those goals, I'm supposing they need to be in control of them. So how equipped are they to actually be in control?
Yeah, so that's always, so the level of autonomy is always, difficult to find. Mm-hmm. So this is where, so one of the founders, Gideon, and myself have had a lot of conversations about. So you need to put rules in place, and I don't like the word rules, and this is something that Gideon has convinced me a lot of, is rules give people freedom, because you know exactly where the boundaries are. So if you set very clear boundaries, then you should feel comfortable giving people freedom within those boundaries. But in order to give people that freedom, you need to first set the boundaries. So I think what we have done is set very, very clear rules. Like for instance, a rule we have is, and a lot of people wouldn't agree with this, is this doesn't apply to the current crisis, but prior to the crisis, we had a rule where, we have flexible working hours. You can go and come as you choose. If you choose to work from home, please only work from home on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So this may seem inflexible, but we have very clear reasons why we did this. So we're more than happy people to work from home. but on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we would like people to be in the office. And the reason we did this, our reasons were because we have investors. And if our investors walk into an empty office, it just doesn't look good. So we basically said, look, for this reason, we can schedule investor meetings on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays if we know that the office is going to be full on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So we set very clear rules. We didn't say work from home whenever you choose to. No, please work from home on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. It might seem restricted, but it gives people freedom within those restrictions. You can choose to work from home Tuesday and Friday every week, fine. Or choose to work from home, only a Tuesday, or come to the office every single day. So I think to find that balance between giving people autonomy to be able to set and achieve their own goals within their teams, we made sure we set very clear rules. And Gideon and myself debate upon the language of this, because I like to call them guidelines. And he says guidelines means they're blurry. We have to call them rules because then people have freedom within the rules. And I tend to agree with him, unfortunately. But yeah, so I think our teams, we have given them autonomy within those very clear boundaries.
And how do you feel, I mean, in this period now that we had this unexpected events? So how flexible were you in terms of the goals that you were setting, and both those monthly goals and the overall yearly goal? I mean, since the whole year is going to be off due to this event, so I was just wondering how you actually adapted, and have you achieved anything in that sense?
Yeah, so we as an organization decided not to change our company goals at all. They'd become more challenging, but we decided not to alter them at all. So we stuck to all our company goals and decided that we weren't quite ready to scale down our company goals, but with the clear intention that we know that people will not be at the same performance level. So I was very, very honest with my team on the very first day of the lockdown here in Amsterdam. I had both my kids at home, and I knew for the foreseeable future I would have 2 kids at home and trying to balance a full-time job. You know also what that's like, Anna. And we talked about this. So in my conversation, I could have done 2 things, on the phone with my team. I could have said to them, oh no, it's business as usual, and I'm going to be working all hours of the day and night in order to try and achieve my goals. But I was actually very honest, and I said, look, my performance is going to be very, very low. There are some days when I'll not be able to get any work done. But it was about focusing on the top priorities. So what we said to everyone is continue to set monthly goals, but make sure your goals focus on the highest priority towards achieving the company goals. So if you have to make a choice, so we have in our playbook, which we are planning to publish actually, we have some what we call codes or rules. We have some very, very clear codes. And our number 1 code is do what you think is right by charge trip. So within those kind of rules, we said to people, focus on your top priorities. Don't worry about everything else. And if you're ever in doubt, look at the rule book, look at the playbook, and use that as your guiding policy. If you're, even if it comes to, should I be working on this or should I be working on this? We have rules, like we've just put codes in place that should help you make that decision. So we were not flexible at all in terms of the company goals. We were very, very flexible in terms of people's productivity. So that's one thing that we decided. There were some days where we knew that people would be working, gung-ho, and just kind of, maybe you had a day without your kids, or you had a day without your pets, or you weren't taking care of elderly parents, or you were in the right mental frame of mind to work, or if you were alone and in isolation, you were just having a really hard day and your productivity was down to 10%. So in terms of productivity, we were really flexible, but in terms of the company goals, we didn't alter them at all. And because our entire system is peer review based, we expected your peers to be understanding. You weren't going to your manager and you weren't expected to report to your manager. You were expected to report to your peers. So we expected that the team would carry each other. If someone's performance was low because they had a sick child, or they had to take their dog to the vet, or they were just having the blues because bloody hell, we were stuck in isolation for months and not seeing people, So, yeah. So no, we weren't flexible in goals. We were flexible in people's productivity. And also the way we do our goals is you define your own measure of success. So I should have said this. So your goals are outcome-based, just like an OKR would be, and they should be in the same language as charge strips goals. But you define your own measure of success. So we encourage you, together with your coach, to basically say, how will you evaluate your success at the end of the month? And to be honest, people are so critical of themselves. You are your worst critic. So people, when they define their own measure of success, are so critical on their own performance that we don't need a manager or a boss to be critical of them. People want to strive to achieve their own goals. Like for me, for instance, I love ticking boxes. Like ticking boxes, it's my drug. So I love, for lack of a better, getting shit done and ticking boxes. So I know that's how I'll evaluate my own performance, is I'll make sure I've ticked all the boxes at the top of my list. And I'm very critical of my own performance. So there's no reason for me to have a boss or a manager telling me I've done really well or done really badly. My peers will do that for me, and I will do that for myself. So in fact, we encourage positive feedback. We really encourage positive feedback because, with the attitude that you are your own worst critic. So I will always undervalue myself in terms of my performance. I've learned not to do that. But I'm talking about a person will always undervalue their own performance, but their peers, if their peers are taught to give positive feedback, will encourage them and show them actually how well they've done everything they've achieved. So rather than having your manager sit down and tell you, this is what you did really well, this is what you should keep doing, this is what you should stop doing. I know what I should stop doing. I'm my worst critic, and my peers will give me my positive feedback. So it sort of creates a really nice circle of trust. And it has worked really well for us.
Cool. You mentioned something that was interesting. You said that you leave it up to people to make the right call, to make the right decision, do what's right.
Yeah.
So for me, that would mean that you really have trust in the people that you selected. And that sort of brings me to thinking about, so how do you select people and really to have this kind of confidence and trust in them that they will do the right thing? I mean, is there really a test for that?
No, not really. So it means that we do two things. So in our hiring processes, firstly, we don't do assignments, and we don't, we basically we don't do really case studies and stuff like that. A lot of our hiring is intuitive. So we don't, and we also only hire within our networks. So I got this job through a network, basically. So Chartship only hires within their network. We advertise on our website, but we don't really advertise, or maybe nowhere else really. We don't use recruiters. We don't use, job sites and stuff like that really. So we hire people we know or who they know. And that might be wrong in the industry. You might say it's nepotism or something, but it's so important to us to hire people who fit our values. And if they fit our values, then we can trust them. Otherwise, we wouldn't hire them. This is why we only hire within our network, because we want this really tight fit with our values and add to our culture. So that also means that when we hire, we have to do a 1-month probation period. And in that probation period, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And we are very clear that, if at the end of the 1-month probation period, it doesn't work out, then we have to sort of part ways. Sometimes that also means that we do 6-month contracts. So that's, I guess, the downside of doing it this way, is you do need to have a lot of trust in the people you hire. They have to be a really close fit to the values. it means that we will have a probation period, and often we will give an initial 6-month contract to make sure that you are the right person for the job. And that is all to build trust. So actually, what a good point. I should have mentioned this at the start. So it does take doing things a little bit differently. So for instance, in Tomtom, they do things the other way around. So they have, at least in our team, and I know they're transitioning to only doing permanent contracts. So you do have a 1 or 3 month probation period, but then you get a permanent contract. So I think Tomtom is slowly transitioning away from doing 1-year contracts. But that means their hiring process is a lot stricter. So I know when I joined Tomtom, and this was even 5 years ago, I had a phone interview followed by a face-to-face interview with my, I think the director and HR person. I then had a case study interview with 4 people, followed by a one-on-one interview with the VP of the department. I then had a 5th interview with my line manager. So they have this really intense hiring period because they only give out permanent contracts. So that works for them. For us, we didn't want to do that. You know, a value fit is so important for us. So we do kind of 3 or 4 interviews with 3 or 4 people, which is basically, you know, a conversation, a chat. There might be some technical questions to it. Because we also only hire novices. So we try really hard to only hire novices and grow them within our system. Yes, we do sometimes hire experienced people and people to the leadership team like myself, but it's an exception to the rule. And we do 1 month probation period and sometimes 6-month contracts. And once we're really sure, then you're in, you're in. You know, then you get benefits of all of this system once you're in. So, yeah.
So how do you feel this will sort of, is it going to be applicable once you start scaling?
Yeah, so we've started scaling now, and that's exactly what we're doing. So we have backfilled senior positions when we needed to. So when we've lost a senior person, we've had to backfill that role. Yes, we've hired senior people, but we are kind of only hiring novices at the moment, which also is to our detriment, also means that there's a lot of senior people who we could hire that we're not going to now, unfortunately. But it is easier to stick to your values 100% of the time than 98% of the time, because once you make an exception, you'll keep making an exception. So we've made the decision, we'll backfill senior positions, but we'll only hire novices. And it's good for us. It's good for us because there's lots of benefits to hiring novices. Because the system that we're using, this peer-reviewed system, this system of setting monthly tweet site goals, it's new. And it's difficult to sometimes change the mindset of people who've come from from a different system. You know, like if we hired all Google people, they'd probably say what we were doing was bullshit. So, you know, it's almost easier for us to make the system work if we grow people within the system, rather than trying to teach people a whole new system. So I'm not saying that if you're already part of an organization, you need to start doing that, not necessarily. I mean, starting something like an apprenticeship system or a peer review system is it's not difficult to do within a small team of people. You don't have to change your entire organization. Changing your hiring practices might require a bit more of a change if you're part of a bigger organization, and that's understandable. But if you were to go to HR and say you're hiring someone who, you know, makes 40,000 a year rather than 80,000 a year, they're not going to complain. You know, you're more likely to get budget for hiring someone who makes 40,000 a year than 80,000 a year anyway. So, yeah, I mean, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, unfortunately. But I think implementing a peer review system is a great place to start, and that's not something that needs an entire organizational change.
What is the proportion between the senior and the novice people? How many seniors versus how many novice?
Yeah, so I think our leadership team is 4 people and they're senior. We have a lot of novices at the moment. So novices we have maybe at the moment 6. Then we have accomplished people, I think. Yeah, accomplished would be like 8. We have 2 people who are experienced. We have no one who's a master at the moment, no one who's a team manager, we have 1 person in strategy operations, and then 4 people in the leadership team. So it's spread out. So we've got majority of our people at the moment sitting in accomplished.
Is there a sort of assigned somebody of the senior people per team, or the teams are completely novice people? How does that work?
No, so all novices have a coach, and generally there is a coach for each team. So we have, in terms of engineering, we've got 2 main engineering teams. And there is kind of a coach, like a more senior person in each team, and that coach generally, so it cascades. So you'll have the coach who's probably a senior software engineer, not necessarily, but it's just the way it's worked out at the moment. Anyone from accomplished onwards can coach. But it doesn't mean they coach the whole team. So they might coach 2 people in the team, and those 2 people will be coaching other people in the team. That's how we've done it. So if there's a novice, they might have a coach who's maybe 1 level up, above them, and then you'd have the senior person who's probably has 2 people. One might be accomplished, might be a novice, and the accomplished person that has 2 other people. So we sort of made it that sort of system. The way we've made it is you can coach someone who's in your same level as well. Just means that you have something still to teach them, and that person still has room to grow. And yeah, you can have multiple senior people in a team, just like you can have multiple novices. So yeah, I guess also time will tell.
Yeah. To be honest, I'm all out of questions. I'm just going to ask because people were dropping out. You can see the comments in the chat, but we have Milos and Sasha with us. I'm just going to check if anybody has anything to ask, to add.
Sure.
No?
Awesome.
Okay, then it seems that we're closing up this talk. Yeah, this is really an interesting topic, and it's a completely new view on this subject. So I would be really interested that you come back at the end of the year just to see where you're at and what what practices you really adopted and kept, and maybe some you I don't know, tossed aside.
Yeah, got rid of. Yeah, continuous improvement.
Yeah, exactly. That would be interesting to see. Thank you so much. It was great talking to you as always.
Thanks, Anna. I really appreciate it.